You may not remember, but in 2015, when Tony Abbott came to an ACM function to give the Neville Bonner oration, he surprised us by calling on ACM to support the constitutional recognition of the Aboriginal people. And you might remember that I had to move the vote of thanks. This was in 2015. I could read the room, and I could see that the room just did not agree with him. And we'd been talking about this, and I suggested that perhaps this should be put to a convention, an elected convention of the people. Start with the people. Don't just throw something to the people as the government is with the voice. Let the people in a convention talk about this and come up with a conclusion. And we put in a submission to the meeting about, this was a parliamentary committee on Aboriginal Indigenous recognition, and we put that in, that it should all depend on a convention. Well, a lot of other people after that convention took that up. They took the idea of having a convention up, but they just had a convention in the Uluru of just Indigenous people, where they produced the Uluru Statement, and that's produced the voice. But they changed from changing the constitution in other respects, which would never have got up, and now they've got this voice business. But do you remember our proposal to hold a convention?
Yes, I remember the proposal being put forward, and I think the difference, of course, is one where you say the detail would be on the table. So it's something that would be very much a bottom-up approach, and what's sort of enjoys the support of that group would be able to proceed forward from that point. But yeah, when you have a look at the way that, for example, with the voice that it's played out, again, there's no detail that's being put forward up front. So it's one of those things that's being put forward as, well, just trust us to work out the detail later. And I think a lot of people, rightly so, are very skeptical to give blanket support for a proposal, not knowing what that looks like, especially something of constitutional nature, because it'd be very difficult to imagine something like that being repealed, even if it were possible, being repealed after the fact, if it weren't to play out in practice as they hold it out to be in theory.
The Constitution is now over 1.25 centuries old. It's been reviewed from time to time by committees of lawyers and committees of politicians, all sorts of organisations. The government has had to review it. The people have never reviewed it. Isn't it time, Jai, for a general convention, a convention elected by the people to review our constitution, particularly if a government is going to put up something like the voice, then they're going to run the republic again? Isn't it time for a convention elected by the people, as we said in 2015, of unpaid delegates? I thought that was important, that the delegates not be paid. We don't want people going there just for the money. You might remember one politician on the committee had a go at us over that, particularly over the delegates being unpaid. He seemed to be upset by that. But isn't it time for the people to be entitled to a review of their constitution?
Well, yes, look, I think it's a good thing to have. Much like, I suppose, you take your car to the mechanic to be serviced, and they check things over and make sure that everything's in working order. Fundamentally, though, I think that the Constitution is serving us well. There's nothing major there that's of a constitutional nature that's a problem. The problem is the politicians and the way that they operate, and then also the judges with their activist approach to interpreting the Constitution. So I think that there could be a few tweaks more than fundamental changes to introduce those tools by which to hold the politicians more accountable. But I think they're tweaks more than fundamental changes. But if you had a convention of that nature, I think everything could be on the table for discussion. And then what proceeds from it, I think, would be tweaks.